I grew up in a small, rural town nestled between sprawling fields and dense woods. There wasn't much to do, so most of my childhood was spent exploring the outskirts. The one place we were always told to avoid, though, was the old dirt road just beyond the forest line, a forgotten path that led to nowhere, or so the adults said. Local legend had it that the road was once used by settlers, but something terrible happened long ago. Nobody ever gave details, only warnings. Over time, the road became overgrown and was left to nature, with rumors circulating that strange things happened to anyone who wandered down it. Naturally, curiosity got the better of me. One humid summer evening, my friend Tom dared me to go with him to check out the old road. I wasn't keen on the idea, but I couldn't back down from a dare. So, armed with flashlights, we set off, making our way through the dense underbrush until we found the entrance. The dirt path stretched out before us, swallowed by shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. At first, it seemed just like any other trail, overgrown with tall grass, lined with trees. The air was still, the kind of quiet that felt wrong somehow, like the whole world had paused. We joked to ease the tension, but the deeper we walked, the more uneasy we became. About 20 minutes in, things started to feel off. The trees seemed to close in around us, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that blocked out the evening light. The path, which had been relatively straightforward, began to twist that felt unnatural, like it was trying to lead us somewhere. And then we saw it. Up ahead, barely visible in the gloom, was a small cabin. It wasn't supposed to be there. Everyone said there were no buildings left on this road. Yet there it stood, tucked between the trees like it had been forgotten for years. The windows were dark, the wood rotting, but there was something unsettlingly intact about it, as though it had been waiting for us. Tom, always braver than me, urged us to get closer. Reluctantly, I followed. As we approached, the air grew thick, oppressive, and a faint buzzing sound filled my ears like static. My skin prickled, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Suddenly, Tom froze. His flashlight beam had caught something, a figure standing in the window just barely visible. It was too dark to make out details, but there was no mistaking it. Someone or something was inside watching us. Tom whispered my name, his voice shaky. "Do you see that?" I nodded, my mouth dry, heart pounding. Neither of us moved for what felt like hours, locked in place by the silent figure. Then, without warning, it disappeared from the window, vanishing into the darkness of the cabin. That was enough for me. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But before we could turn around, the door creaked open. Not fast, but slowly, like something was deliberately inviting us in. Tom, against all common sense, took a step forward, as if drawn by some unseen force. I grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "We need to go. Now." For a second, it was like he didn't hear me. His eyes were locked on the open door, his face blank. Then, with a shudder, he snapped back, nodded, and we took off running. The path behind us seemed longer than it had on the way in. The trees twisted unnaturally, and it felt like something was right behind us, following. I didn't dare look back, and I'm not sure Tom did either. We didn't stop until we broke free of the woods and tumbled into the clearing near town, gasping for breath. We never spoke about what happened that night. Not to each other, not to anyone. But something changed in Tom after that. He was never quite the same. He became distant and quiet, like part of him had been left on that road. Years later, after I had moved away, I heard that Tom had gone missing. They said he went back to that old road alone one night. The locals searched, but he was never found. Sometimes when I think back to that evening, I wonder what would have happened if I had let him go into that cabin. Or worse, if I had followed. But there's one thing I'm certain of: I'll never go back to that forgotten path. Some places are meant to be left alone,